Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. For the first time in 2019, welcome to a live commentary stream of a Formula One race, namely the 2019 Austrian Grand Prix. Yes, we are returning to doing some commentary for Formula One this year. I'm not doing this today because I feel guilty of forsaking all of you for the balance of the season thus far. I'm doing it today because we finally appear to have something interesting about to happen on the grid of a Formula One race. We will give a moment for our clocks to synchronize here, and we will get into the starting grid. Yes, Mr. Jack Barlow, hello, welcome, thank you for joining us. You're our first spectator here today. It indeed has been a long time coming as far as I'm concerned. Yes, the entire balance of the 2019 season thus far has followed without me really pontificating too much about it in real time. However, for the first time this year, we've got something quite spectacular in store for us if everything pans out the way we're all hoping it pans out. We have got a Ferrari on pole in the hands of Charles Leclerc. We have another Ferrari at the back of the Q3 grid anyway. Sebastian Vettel not getting a time in the third and final qualifying session due to a technical fault. I'm still not entirely sure what that technical fault actually was, but whatever it was, it prevented them from starting the engine and therefore running the car in the final session of qualifying yesterday. That puts Sebastian 10th on the grid, and well, that's not entirely good if you want to be the runner-up in a Drivers' World Championship. However, what we do have going on today looks a little bit something like this, as we try to get all of our things synchronized here, in terms of getting the data channels together from live commentary and all of that. Starting grid for the race is as follows. Charles Leclerc, as we mentioned, is on pole with a Q3 time of 1 minute 3 seconds, .003. That is an all-out track record around here, the fastest anybody has ever been around the Red Bull Ring. Second position is Lewis Hamilton in qualifying, as it was. It later came out that Lewis Hamilton had a penalty for impeding Kimi Räikkönen during Q1. He was given a 3-place grid drop. However, due to other shuffling that occurred on the farther parts of the grid, Lewis Hamilton will be starting in P3 today. Interesting. Max Verstappen put in the third fastest qualifying time with a 103.439. Bottas in fourth with a 103.537. Kevin Magnussen, P5 for a 104.072. Lando Norris, this was a big story. McLaren perhaps have finally found some pace. He's in P6 right now, 104.099. Kimi Räikkönen bringing the Alfa Romeo Sauber Ferraris into Q3. 104.166 was his Q3 time. P8, Antonio Giovinazzi. So both Alfa Romeos making it into Q3, 104.179, just fractions behind his much more experienced world champion teammate. Pierre Gasly for Red Bull in P9, 104.199. And Sebastian Vettel, our last Q3 finisher, didn't actually run in Q3. His Q2 time was a 103.667. Q2 finishers, Romain Grosjean in P11, 104.490. P12 for Nico Hülkenberg, 104.516. Alex Albon in P13 for Toro Rosso, 104.665 was his Q2 time. Daniel Ricciardo in the recalcitrant Renault, P14, 104.790. Carlos Sainz in the second McLaren, P15, 104.453 was his Q1 time. His Q2 time was a 113.601. Big problems there for Carlos Sainz. Our Q1 finisher, Sergio Perez in P16, 104.789. P17 for Lance Stroll, 104.832. Daniel Kvyat in P18 for Toro Rosso, 105.324. And the two Williams at the back, as we might expect. George Russell in P19, 105.904. And Robert Kubica in P20, 106.206. We mentioned that there were penalties in store after qualifying yesterday. Lewis Hamilton did receive a penalty for impeding Kimi Räikkönen in the closing stages of Q1. Obviously, both drivers did advance all the way into Q3. However, Lewis Hamilton did receive a penalty. He will, according to this FIA press release, which comes from nearly 24 hours ago now, he'll be starting from P4 on the grid. There is still a little bit of confusion in terms of where exactly from Lewis Hamilton will start. I do believe it is actually P4. However, we'll see how they actually line up on the grid. There was confusion for a couple of hours there regarding where exactly Hamilton would be starting. In terms of why Hamilton was given a penalty, I think the overall rationale behind it on the part of the FIA was that Hamilton could have simply slowed down a bit more, moved to the right, and yielded to Raikkonen without impeding him. However, is it a bit heavy-handed from the stewards? I tend to think that it is. I don't think that there was any real warrant in issuing any penalties with regard to that supposed infraction, simply because both drivers made it through, there was no contact, and effectively nobody was the worse for wear for it. There was still plenty of time for Raikkonen to put in a banker time and get out of Q1, which of course he did, and Lewis Hamilton is pretty much never in danger of being eliminated in Q1, so it was good for the show. I say no penalties necessary, but no matter, the FIA have spoken, and Hamilton was given a 3-place grid drop. As far as everything else after qualifying, well, the big story definitely has to be what the front row currently looks like. Charles Leclerc on pole and Max Verstappen right alongside him, and we're showing the graphics now courtesy of the FOM TV stream. Lewis Hamilton will be starting in 4th today. You've got two front rows there of two very powerful drivers, Leclerc and Verstappen on the front row, and then on the second row, Bottas and Hamilton, respectively. What is this start going to be? What is the run into turn 3 going to look like? Obviously, we do have a very short run uphill into turn 1 here in Austria, but the real main drag of the first lap is between turns 1 and 3. The little kink there on that straight is considered turn 2 by the FIA. So into turn 3, the uphill hairpin right-hander. Where are we going to be seeing fireworks? I do believe we may be seeing the first fireworks of the day right there. Can Charles Leclerc, with Ferrari's obviously good straight-line speed, hold off a charging Max Verstappen, who will be desperate for a good result this year, Red Bull not having the best season so far, and of course, both powerhouse Mercedes on the second row of the grid, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas, they will both be working in tandem, trying to overtake that front row. Can Leclerc come out on top from that three-way assault? We will find out. Meanwhile, cameras picking up Sebastian Vettel there, getting ready to go. And now we see the engine cover of Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes focusing in on that single red star on the engine cover, of course, there in tribute to the late Niki Lauda. Now starting to get all of our wires uncrossed again, and finally able to take a look at our live chat going on. Welcome to everybody who has joined in the last few minutes. We've had some technical issues. I've not been able to see the chat, but now I can. Yes, let's look at the chat. 10 seconds of silence. Well, there are quite a few messages sitting there, which of course I'm very happy to see. And again, thank you all for joining us. And if anybody else is in the process of tuning in, please do so. You will not be sorry that you did. The formation lap now getting underway. Cars coming off the grid, and it looks like everybody has made it off the grid. No surprises there. Of course, that's what we want to see. On board with Charles Leclerc as we go into turn 3. This is turn 3, remember, the FIA consider it. And now taking a look at that infield straight heading between turns 1 and 3. The braking zone for turn 3 is where we are going to see action on the first lap. I do not doubt that for one moment. And I'm sure if your name is Lewis Hamilton, you want all of the action to happen to those around you, and you want to sail through into P1. Conversely, if you are Charles Leclerc, you want to make sure that everybody takes each other out several hundred meters behind you, and you have a very easy coast to victory today over this race distance. Yes, I'm seeing our typical antics going on in the live chat there with our stalwart subscribers to the channel. Meanwhile, looking on with Charles Leclerc as he is making his way back to the grid. Mattia Binotto sitting there on the Ferrari pit wall. The front runners have made it back onto the start-finish straight. They have the rest of the field in tow. Not a particularly fast formation lap, and taking a look now at the Williams of George Russell, just getting on the ground there. He'll be starting from the pit lane quite obviously. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen have taken their grid slots 1 and 2 respectively. Taking a look at Carlos Sainz in the McLaren, going through his pre-start procedure, doing some burnouts, making sure the clutch map is correct, making sure the tires and brakes are up to their temperatures. Charles Leclerc now just stretching out, making sure his gloves are on tight. Last 2 rows still to join the grid, and the medical car at the back. Toto Wolff looking on with his typical concentration. The grid has been reformed. Medical car in position. The green flag is up. The lights are on. All 5. Pause. The lights are out, and we are away in Austria. Max Verstappen with an absolutely terrible start. He bogged down. He's already dropped back about 6 positions. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc is first into turn 1, and he is leading clear away. We have a few cars which took to the escape road on the outside of turn 1. However, no contact that I could discern. But the story here, what happened to Max Verstappen? He had absolutely no reaction to the lights. It appeared that he bogged down immediately. He didn't get his first gear shift done, and he had no speed at all. I do believe Pierre Gasly has overtaken him now. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, appears to be pulling out a lead over Valtteri Bottas, who is currently in P2. Lewis Hamilton in P3 being harried by Kimi Räikkönen in the Alfa Romeo. Some lockups there into turn 4. However, again, I do not believe there has been any contact. Kimi Räikkönen being hounded by Lando Norris there for what I do believe is P5. Great start for the 2007 world champion. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel, the cameras pick him up now. He is behind Kimi Räikkönen at this point, and Räikkönen still being hounded by Norris. He has managed to get that position, though. Now Sebastian Vettel trying to overtake Lando Norris. This should be an academic affair. However, Mr. Norris has been on an absolutely inspired crusade this weekend. Meanwhile, at the end of lap 1, Charles Leclerc leads over Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton. Kimi Räikkönen is in 4th, I beg your pardon. Lando Norris still in 5th. Vettel 6th, Verstappen down to 7th, Pierre Gasly 8th, Giovinazzi 9th, and Kevin Magnussen is 10th. Max Verstappen, what could have been, he had an absolutely dreadful launch off the line. Again, it's a manual start process. The drivers are just raising the revs and dropping the clutch just like you might do in your road car, and Verstappen just happened to get that sequence of events ever so wrong. Bottas and Hamilton immediately benefiting therefrom, and Charles Leclerc is now leading this race by 1.6 seconds already. The end of lap 2, Charles Leclerc sets the fastest lap of the race thus far, as you might expect. 1 minute 9 seconds, .282. Valtteri Bottas, 1.8 seconds behind. Lewis Hamilton 3.3 seconds behind. So Leclerc already starting to pull up a significant gap. DRS has been enabled at the start of lap 3, and we see the cars down the infield straight using DRS in one of 3 DRS zones around this very short racetrack. There's the official notification from race control, DRS enabled. Again, Charles Leclerc currently holds fastest lap. I do anticipate that to change, though, as cars in the midfield now have that DRS speed boost. The important thing for Charles Leclerc is that he is already well outside of DRS range. He currently leads Valtteri Bottas by 2.2 seconds. Therefore, Bottas nor Hamilton will have DRS to be able to attack the Ferrari. Speaking of Ferraris, we ride on board with the other one, Sebastian Vettel. Just taking a look through the infield section there was a strange vibration across the front end of that car. Could be just a slightly loose camera mount today, but Sebastian Vettel currently in P6, trying to get past the McLaren of Lando Norris, who is holding his own at this point. We would not normally expect a McLaren to be able to hold off a Ferrari, but this is a rather different type of racetrack than the others that we have been to this year. It's a much older circuit, much more traditional circuit, not as many corners around here, more emphasis on straights, and the McLaren, thus far, as Sebastian Vettel tries to pull alongside with DRS, Norris fights back, and that was very aggressive from Sebastian Vettel. He's gone a little bit wide into the exit of turn 3. Norris currently behind the Ferrari, but he has DRS again. Will he get the Ferrari back into turn 4? It appears so. Vettel not giving Norris any quarter. Has he overdone it? No. Sebastian Vettel has so far taken that position, P5, from Lando Norris, but the McLaren is still there. It is able to bring the fight to Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari, at least momentarily there, when they do have some clear air. Max Verstappen now trying to get all over the gearbox of Lando Norris. We have to see if that Red Bull is entirely healthy. I don't believe there would be any problems with the car. Again, that problem off the start for Max Verstappen appeared to be 100% driver-induced, and so far Verstappen's times appear to be competitive. Still following the progress are the FOM international feed cameras of Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Verstappen's still not quite close enough to get a proper run on the McLaren. Perhaps he is waiting for that DRS assistance down the infield straight out of turn 1. He will also get DRS down start-finish, as we see him using now, but the Red Bull does not appear to have that much acceleration out of the corners. As we go into a replay of the start, Max Verstappen just entirely bogs down. He had no launch off the line at all. It did not appear to be wheel spin in terms of what the problem was. He just appeared to bog down as if the revs were not high enough. And again, that would be a driver error. On board with Verstappen. The revs are there. He goes into anti-stall. We could see there on the steering wheel. We have lights across the top of the steering wheel, of course, that indicate to the driver when they are ready to be upshifting, but they change in their pattern when a car goes into anti-stall, and that is what we just observed there in the onboard replay with Max Verstappen. There was not enough throttle angle dialed in for the ECU to be happy with letting the clutch out, so he goes into anti-stall. Remember, these Formula One cars do not have onboard starters. Some of them these days are self-starting, but not all of them, it would appear, and the anti-stall is still an important part of the ECU mapping there, just to protect the engine from being stalled, basically, or bogged down too heavily, and thereby potentially causing damage. That's what happened to Max Verstappen. Sebastian Vettel in replay, taking Lando Norris for P4 there, and Vettel is, Vettel remains in P4, Kimi Räikkönen now in P5. Max Verstappen with DRS on Lando Norris, but the Red Bull does not really have the straight line speed. Verstappen pulls alongside. Norris continues to fight hard, but Verstappen has the inside line, and he has taken that 6th position now off of Lando Norris. Verstappen retains DRS in the 2nd DRS zone. Norris either didn't have it or chose not to use it. Quite odd. I would have expected there to be DRS on both cars or just the car of Norris, given what timing does with the detection zones there. But no matter. The position is now Verstappen's, P6 for the Dutchman. Meanwhile, at the front, Charles Leclerc continues to lead the race. The gap has fallen a little bit, 2.6 seconds on lap 7. Back to Valtteri Bottas. He still holds fastest lap of the race, and at this point we're starting to get midway into the first stint. We would be expecting pit stops at any time between now, which would be quite early, and lap 17 to lap 20. Charles Leclerc running on the soft compound tire, so we are a little bit concerned over that tire degradation. How are they going to perform? However, so far it does appear that the Ferrari is doing well on them. Again, lap 8 of 71, Charles Leclerc leads Valtteri Bottas by 2.6 seconds. Lewis Hamilton 5.2 behind. Sebastian Vettel has fought his way up so far into P4. He is 10.5 seconds behind the race leader. Max Verstappen taking a look at Kimi Räikkönen there into turn 3, and that was a fairly easy move for Verstappen. Räikkönen knows that he really doesn't have the car to be fighting with a Red Bull, therefore he did not give Verstappen too much of a fight there. Verstappen up into P5 now. The Dutchman's next target is going to be Sebastian Vettel, who is roughly 4 seconds up the road, and his pace so far has been good. However, you can count it visually there from this infield camera shot. The Ferrari goes by, and then the flash of blue, the Red Bull, comes into frame. Verstappen is going to be on a charge, as we have already seen, as his father, Jos, looks on from the Red Bull garage. Verstappen does want P4, and I tend to believe he's going to get it before too long. Sebastian Vettel just turning into turn 1. And now, as I speak, Verstappen does the same. That fight is a long way from over. Also, what is a long way from over is what's going on at the sharp end of the field. The gap between Leclerc and Bottas for positions 1 and 2 has remained stable, now up to 2.7 seconds. It was 2.6 just 2 laps ago, so marginal changes there, but for the most part, we can say that that is a stable gap. Obviously, the Mercedes biding their time to the pit stops. What will Ferrari do? A betting man might say that they are going to be pitting first. However, we will see what's been going on. Leclerc yesterday was very supple with his touch on the car. He was able to make it do things in a much more linear, less dramatic fashion in terms of putting too many large steering movements into the car, and all of this is good for tire and brake wear. Can Leclerc parlay that into a longer race stint? We will find out. Watching a midfield battle here, Kevin Magnussen being harried by a Toro Rosso. I believe that is Daniel Kvyat. Rather academic affair with DRS, but Magnussen coming back up now the outside with more DRS assistance. Back down, regains the position into turn 4. That Toro Rosso is actually Alex Albon. It's very difficult to tell the helmets apart on the Toro Rosso drivers from a front-end shot. They've both got red accents. Ferrari telling Charles Leclerc, Plan A, whatever that means. I believe in France they were down to Plan F. However many different permutations the Ferrari team have for their race strategy, it is Plan A for Charles Leclerc. Now getting word from race control of a drive-through penalty for being out of position at the start. I could not catch who that penalty was for. And apologies for the disjointed commentary at this point. Still having all sorts of technical problems here relative to the F1 TV service. I'm trying to get timing and scoring up, and I still, 14 laps into this race, have been unable to access the information that I'm looking for. Meanwhile, Lando Norris and Kimi Räikkönen going at it there into T3 rather. Drive-through penalty was for Kevin Magnussen. They said he was out of position at the start. What happened here? We're in replay on board with him. Not seeing what's going on there, and the replay cuts out. I would assume that they're saying that Kevin Magnussen jumped to start, but no matter. We're on board in P7 with car number 7. Kimi Räikkönen. Pierre Gasly is right on our gearbox. Kimi, we have DRS going on that car. And Kimi once again trying to get after Lando Norris. Norris can't seem to catch a break today. He's being hounded by everybody, it seems. been overtaken by one world champion, is about to be overtaken by another. Kimi Räikkönen, hello. Come on past whenever you're ready. Working lap 16 of 71. The gap at the sharp end of the field has grown again. Charles Leclerc leads Valtteri Bottas by 3.7 seconds. Lewis Hamilton is 2.5 seconds behind Bottas in P3. Sebastian Vettel now up into P4. Could we be seeing a battle between Hamilton and Vettel later on in this race? It is possible. We could have a little bit of a role reversal in terms of what happened in Canada. We've got Hamilton leading Vettel at this point. Will Hamilton throw it off the road? I doubt it. Onboard in replay with Lewis Hamilton is going a little bit wide there in the exit of turn 1. Nothing to worry about. Slow motion now, taking a look at the integrity of those medium compound tires on the Mercedes. Looks good. They look like they're starting to wear in pretty nicely. Obviously, that sheen is now long gone from them as Max Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race at a 109.252. Now on board with Charles Leclerc on the soft tires. Note the red sidewall there. Taking a look at the front end, they look all right. They don't look brand new because they're not. They are now 17 laps old as far as the Grand Prix is concerned. As far as the overall tire life is concerned, they are about 20 laps old, considering that they've also done Q3 laps, but they still look good. Ferrari don't appear to be overly concerned as we take a look into their garage. Following Lewis Hamilton now. He's not trying to catch his teammate. Continuing to hold station about 2.5 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas, who in turn holds station behind Charles Leclerc by 3.7 seconds. FOM cameras again showing us Hamilton going off at turn 1. That is the same incident that we saw previously, I do believe. Following Sebastian Vettel now. Again, running in P4. His target is Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari team radio to Vettel saying, "You're doing well." He will be catching Lewis Hamilton at this rate. Not entirely sure how quickly that will happen. He's about 3.3 seconds back from the Englishman, and we are getting into pit stop rotation, so perhaps all of that is going to be spoiled by the pit stops, but we will see. Meanwhile, on board with Pierre Gasly, hounding Kimi Räikkönen, he's just a third of a second behind the Finn. With DRS assistance, the Red Bull goes up the outside as Räikkönen shuts the door on the inside. Räikkönen outbrakes Gasly, though, into turn 4 and retains the position, at least for the moment. Charles Leclerc retakes fastest lap away from Max Verstappen. Fastest lap of the race now is 109.227. So everybody running very consistently in the low 1 minute 9 second range at this point, specifically the 1 minute 9 second .2 range. Very interesting to see such an even spread of pace across the field. Sebastian Vettel likewise sets fastest lap and blows my permutation out of the water. 1 minute 9 second .073. We're approaching the 108s. Once again on board with Pierre Gasly trying to overtake Kimi Räikkönen, and he attempted to go the long way around into turn 3. That didn't work. He sacrificed a little bit of position now down the second infield straight, I suppose we could call it, into turn 4. Räikkönen easily defends position there. That was just sloppy on the part of Pierre Gasly. There was no need for him to go so long into turn 3. He would have taken Räikkönen down the straight easily with DRS assistance, but that's the difference between a driver who's been in Formula 1 for 15 years versus a driver who's been here for 1. Taking a look at the Alfa Romeo pits, they appear to be preparing for a stop, but no particular sense of urgency at this point. Raikkonen's pace is still good. Giovinazzi, meanwhile, is still in P9, so both Alfa Romeos in the points today. That's a good showing for them. They appear to like this circuit. Also who appears to like this circuit, Charles Leclerc. The gap is now 4.8 seconds working lap 20. Valtteri Bottas 4.8 seconds behind Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton a further 1.5. Sebastian Vettel is reeling in Lewis Hamilton. He's 2.7 seconds behind Hamilton. Adrian Newey looking on from the Red Bull pit wall. He's not looking like he's enjoying today too particularly. Verstappen in P5 and Gasly down in P8. A Williams is in the pit lane. Was that Russell or Kubica? It was Robert Kubica pitting from P19. You see him rejoining now through this long pit exit here in Austria. Kubica retains P19 as far as I can tell via timing and scoring at this time. In replay with Lewis Hamilton, that's Bottas in front of us. Again, he understeers off the road at turn 1. Is he just pushing it a little bit too far there? There were no lockups, no problems that I could see with the car. Lots of graining on his right rear tire, but Hamilton just understeering gracefully off the road at T1. He's got to be careful with that, though, because there is a rather large curb on the outside of turn 1, which will rip a wing off or punch a hole in the floor pretty easily if a driver's not careful. Jonathan Straitman, hello, as Mercedes comes into the pit lane for whom? And Ferrari in the pit lane. Bottas is in the pits for Mercedes, and the cameras pick him up. We have Sebastian Vettel in the pits for Ferrari. Bottas onto the mediums and released. Sebastian Vettel, this is a very disjointed pit stop from Ferrari. That was a long time getting that right front tire change. That was 6.1 seconds for Ferrari for Sebastian Vettel. Of course, nowadays, we look at a 6.1 second pit stop and say how slow it is. It's not all that long ago that 7, 8, 9, 10 second pit stops were the norm. Sebastian Vettel is on the hard tires, and I believe Bottas as well is now on the hard tires. Indeed. Now, with Ferrari just having a slightly bungled pit stop for one of their cars, that does bring this next pit stop for Charles Leclerc very much into question, and Leclerc makes the pit lane right now. Ferrari have that second pit stall. Leclerc stops on his marks. Do not make a mistake, Ferrari, and they appear not to have made a mistake. That was a very quick stop, 2.6 seconds for Charles Leclerc. He has been serviced and released. Total pit lane time for the Monegasque driver, 21.878 seconds. Fantastic. So they worked the kinks out with Vettel, and they got Leclerc serviced and out very quickly. Now in replay with Sebastian Vettel, what was the cause? Watch the left front. They weren't ready. They didn't have the tires. They weren't quite ready on the right front either. What an extraordinary turn of events for Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel comes in clearly following the plan, and they did not have the tires ready. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel overtaking Pierre Gasly now in P7. Lewis Hamilton responds to Leclerc's pit stop by setting the fastest lap, 108.842. Hamilton absolutely needs to put the hammer down now because everybody in front of him has stopped. He has now inherited the race lead on the pit stop rotation. However, given the pit lane delta, Charles Leclerc still leads the race on aggregate. Max Verstappen up into P2 at the moment. He also has yet to stop. So Charles Leclerc on aggregate is still your race leader at this time. Kimi Räikkönen now finding himself a somewhat left field player in this race. He comes into the pit lane. Kibbe brings the Alfa Romeo into the box. Tires off, tires on, car on the ground, and released. 2.6 seconds, identical time to Ferrari's stop with Charles Leclerc. Good time for the Alfa guys. Timing and scoring shows Kimi Räikkönen rejoining in P15. And for anybody keeping score at home, Kevin Magnussen and Robert Kubica are already one lap down, working lap 25. George Russell is over 1 minute down on the race leader, and with our average lap times here now in the 108 zone, it's not going to be long before George Russell also finds himself a lap down. Cameras picking up Sebastian Vettel recovering from that slightly long pit stop. He is still in P6. He started P9, so whatever happens, this is an improvement for Sebastian Vettel, although one would say, based on the qualifying times from Charles Leclerc yesterday, that Ferrari potentially should have been locking out the front row. It was not to be. A technical problem for Sebastian Vettel, causing him to miss Q3. On board with Lewis Hamilton. Is he going to the pit lane? No, he stays out. He continues to lead the race at this point by 7.7 seconds over Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton's tires 28 laps old, counting their run in Q3. And again, Hamilton runs slightly wide at turn 1. In replay with Lewis Hamilton, not entirely sure how long ago this was. Yes, he caught a bit of oversteer into turn 1. And again, just going over that yellow curb on the outside of the circuit. Red Bull in the pit lane for Pierre Gasly. Gasly stops the RB15. Soft tires off, hard tires on. 2.5 seconds is the stop for Pierre Gasly. Concurrently, Lando Norris makes a pit stop. 2.3 seconds is the time from the McLaren mechanics. Lance Stroll in the Racing Point also making a pit stop. We're not seeing that on screen. However, he is shown in the pit lane and now going through the pit exit. Job done for the Racing Point boys. Meanwhile, Antonio Giovinazzi just overtook Romain Grosjean into turn 3. Giovinazzi now in P14. Meanwhile, off-camera, Nico Hülkenberg takes to the pit lane for Renault. That benefits Raikkonen, Gasly, Giovinazzi, Grosjean. Hülkenberg now shown through the pit exit, rejoining in P15 at the moment, just ahead of Daniel Kvyat. Lewis Hamilton asking the pit crew to check his wing when he pits. He believes he may be losing some downforce. I wouldn't be shocked with the way that he's been absolutely punishing these curbs around several points of this racetrack. But visually, just taking a look at the upper surface of his front wing, it appears to be intact. Nothing looks out of position and nothing looks like it's missing. Both end fences are there, and even some of the strakes underneath the wing appear still to be there. Mercedes does look healthy to my eyes. However, the team have access to hundreds of channels of telemetry data that we are not privy to. They'll be able to tell within milliseconds if something is going wrong on that car. But at the moment, his times are good. He is still holding fastest lap of the race. We're expecting Hamilton to be pitting on this lap or next. George Russell pitting there. Hamilton stays out this time on lap 28. George Russell coming to a stop in the Williams. Decent pit work by the Williams crew. However, their design of the car has a lot to be desired. 3.7 seconds was the stop time. It is an academic affair, unfortunately, for George Russell and Robert Kubica as they continue in vain to wrestle this Williams car around the Grand Prix racetracks of the world, only to finish 19th and 20th week in and week out. Lewis Hamilton continuing to complain about the handling characteristics of that Mercedes. His last lap time was very slow in comparison to Max Verstappen. Verstappen was about 0.6 faster than Hamilton on the previous lap. Not entirely sure if that was just a mistake on Hamilton's part or if we're dealing with a loss of pace. Mercedes here in the pit lane with a front wing on standby for Lewis Hamilton. It doesn't appear that they're going to be changing the wing, but they are prepared to do so if necessary. Verstappen behind Hamilton on the racetrack by 5.3 seconds. Remember, Charles Leclerc basically still your race leader on aggregate. He is 7.2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. The pit lane delta here, as we have seen, is around 22 seconds. And the call from Mercedes to Hamilton. Box, box, box. Hamilton coming in on this lap, lap 30 of 71. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel resets fastest lap. That was a 108.915 for Sebastian Vettel. Hamilton coming through the end of the infield, up the final hill as we are approaching start-finish. He pulls off to the right. Hamilton pitting in from P1. Hamilton on the limiter, approaching his first pit box there. The Mercedes crew await him. Taking a look at that front wing, it looks fine. Are they going to be changing it? Yes, they are changing the front wing for Lewis Hamilton. This is going to be a much longer pit stop than they would have liked. So far, 16 seconds is the pit lane time. Only now do they release him. The pit stop time was 11 seconds. There's the wing that came off of Hamilton's car. I'm not really seeing any damage on it, but Lewis Hamilton sacrificing a good deal of track position there to change a front wing. That takes him out of contention today. Sebastian Vettel, fastest lap once again, 1 minute 8 seconds, .345. Lewis Hamilton rejoins in 5th position, just behind Sebastian Vettel. So Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, and Vettel, all the beneficiaries of Hamilton's long pit stop for a front wing. Hamilton is now on the hard tire. That is the hardest compound, the most durable that we have on offer this weekend. That should easily get him to the end of the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen now pitting from the inherited race lead. Charles Leclerc will resume his race lead, which he has held on aggregate since the start of the race. Lewis Hamilton there in replay on lap 22, going over that very high curb on the exit of turn 1, and now in replay once again externally. Are we about to see what caused the damage to the front wing? Does not appear to be on the exit of turn 3, just the normal vibrations going through that wing. Max Verstappen has pitted and has exited. He is now rejoined in P4. Sebastian Vettel, with his fastest lap point, is now in P3. Charles Leclerc resumes the race lead. He is now ahead of Valtteri Bottas and Sebastian Vettel for your top 3. Verstappen in P4. Hamilton is in 5th, just ahead of Carlos Sainz, who has yet to stop. The next car, which has completed a pit stop and will inherit P6 at some point, will be Lando Norris, who is currently running in P8. Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz yet to stop. Neither has stopped Alex Albon, so going very long in this first stint. All the cars in position 1 to 5 on the hard compound tires. That is dead even across all of them. They're all good to go to the end. In replay with Pierre Gasly once again fighting with Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi goes slightly wide on the exit of turn 3. However, I would think the Alfa Romeo has somewhat superior horsepower to the Red Bull. The Red Bull has DRS though. What does Räikkönen do? That corner is Gasly's, but lots of brake dust coming out of that Red Bull there in that braking zone into turn 4. Far more brake dust coming out of the Red Bull than there was out of the Alfa Romeo as one of the Williams allows Pierre Gasly by. Red Bull telling Max Verstappen that a lot of people are struggling with blisters. Telling Max just to hold station at this point and see what they can work with later on. Verstappen is 3.6 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel for the third and final podium position. That could be a battle that we see before the end. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc continues to lead the race by 4.1 seconds over Valtteri Bottas. Lewis Hamilton remains in P5. In replay, the pit stop for Daniel Kvyat. Long time getting the right rear changed. But they did appear to get everything secured, and Daniel Kvyat resumed the race. No incident there in that pit stop in terms of forgetting to bolt anything up. Unusual amount of pit miscues today. Now the cameras pick up Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen, showing us visually the gap on track. Verstappen is faster than Vettel through all sectors but one. The middle sector, the Ferrari does appear to have the advantage over the Red Bull, and still sort of speculating as to the health of that Red Bull in the hands of Max Verstappen. Again, I would think everything is okay. The only anomaly we've seen from him so far was the bad start. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, resets fastest lap, 1 minute, 8 seconds, 0.344, continuing to hold P1 quite comfortably, 4.5 seconds in front of Valtteri Bottas. We were waiting to hear a message there from Lewis Hamilton. It did not make it to broadcast. We saw the graphics. Lewis Hamilton undoubtedly not satisfied with what's going on right now. He's continuing to drop back from Max Verstappen. That decision to change the front wing cost Hamilton all kinds of track position. Again, we say a long pit stop in relative terms. It was still only 11 seconds to change all four wheels and a front wing. Absolutely remarkable what these teams are able to do nowadays. And on this wide shot there, looking across turn 1, now the radio from Hamilton. Mercedes telling Lewis Hamilton that the current race forecast whatever that means. Undoubtedly, they're doing very sophisticated supercomputer simulations back at Mercedes HQ. They're telling Hamilton that the race is expected to bunch up toward the end, and they're just reminding him, stay in touch with the leaders if you can in relative terms, because if you're there at the end, you might have an opportunity to attack. We'll see if that actually transpires as the cameras pick up Valtteri Bottas now, running in second position. That is a Toro Rosso between he and Charles Leclerc. I believe that's Alex Albon about to go a lap down relative to Bottas. He's already a lap down relative to Charles Leclerc. That would be Daniel Kvyat, I beg your pardon. Again, I cannot tell these two Toro Rossos apart this year. Back marker giving Charles Leclerc yet more breathing space. The gap between he and Bottas is now 5.1 seconds as we're on board with Lando Norris and the McLaren currently running in P8. That's Daniel Ricciardo immediately in front of us, to the tune of about 1 second. If Norris remains where he is, he'll have DRS down start-finish. He won't be close enough to affect any sort of overtaking maneuver. And speaking of drivers who have absolutely fallen off the planet this year, Daniel Ricciardo moving from Red Bull to Renault for 2019. Perhaps he thought it was an inspired career decision. Everybody else thinks it was suicide in terms of ever trying to become world champion. The Renault has been nowhere this year, and unfortunately Daniel Ricciardo, usually a driver who puts on a great show, has not had too many opportunities to entertain this year, nor has he had too many opportunities to score big points. We've not seen him on the podium, and of course we've not seen anybody other than Mercedes win a race so far this year. Daniel Ricciardo, he's going to be wanting a move out of that Renault as soon as possible. Lando Norris trying to send one up the outside into turn 4 on Daniel Ricciardo. That, of course, was never going to work in a month of Sundays. Norris trying to maintain position relative to the Renault through the infield section. The McLaren appears to be slightly weaker than the Renault through here. Undoubtedly, he's dealing with a little bit of dirty air off the back of Ricciardo's car, but the McLaren was also slower than the Red Bull and the Ferrari through there. Their front end not working quite as well as some of the other cars, but they are fast down the straights. Norris and Gasly both have DRS heading up into turn 3. Norris looking to send one up the inside on Daniel Ricciardo. He has to back out of that. That was nearly contact. Norris doing some heads-up driving there, staying on the brakes a little longer, trying to avoid turning into a torpedo. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly with DRS on Lando Norris, who also has DRS. Neither man able to advance, relatively speaking, on each other or to Daniel Ricciardo. Pierre Gasly going very wide over the exit curbs on turn 4. He remains on track, and now we watch the McLaren sort of wash away with understeer through the midfield section. Norris is going to fall into the clutches of Pierre Gasly pretty soon if he's not careful. What is amazing is that Daniel Ricciardo still has yet to pit, and he's holding off the McLaren and the Red Bull both on far newer tires. Yeah, everyone holding station there with the Ricciardo-Norris-Gasly battle. Gasly now the only car in that gaggle that has DRS for the moment, as Norris has dropped back sufficiently from Daniel Ricciardo. However, everybody bunches up again once they get into turn 4, but the understeer sets in for the McLaren, and it just doesn't have the bite necessary to stick with Ricciardo so that he can get a DRS toe down the start-finish straight. On board with Pierre Gasly, how does everything look for the Red Bull driver? Front tires look good. No problems there. We wouldn't expect any problems with the tires at this stage. It's very linear, smooth movements in the steering wheel for Pierre Gasly. He has DRS down start-finish. in the speed trap there just before the braking zone. Looks to be about 312 kilometers per hour with DRS. The Red Bull looks and sounds healthy. Interesting to see, though, the line that Gasly is taking down the infield straight before turn 3. He's not trying to pull any sort of slipstream from Lando Norris. He's just content to use the DRS help. Meanwhile, Norris is closer this time to Daniel Ricciardo into turn 4. He has DRS. He's going up the outside. Ricciardo holds the inside line. Norris outbrakes Ricciardo into the corner. Can he keep it through the exit? Yes. Lando Norris takes P7 away from Daniel Ricciardo. On board with Lewis Hamilton now in P5, just exiting turn 3. From this over-the-shoulder shot, it's very difficult to take a look at the front end of that Mercedes, but it appears to be behaving normally. Hamilton ever smooth as always. Doesn't appear to be working any major problems on the car. Seems to be responding very nicely to his inputs. He's just off the pace. And of course, he's down where he is because of that front wing change in the pit stop. Not entirely sure if that really gained him anything. He's consistently slower lap over lap relative to Max Verstappen, losing about 0.3 a lap. On board once again with Pierre Gasly. Immediately in front of us now is Daniel Ricciardo. The Red Bull definitely biting the front end a bit nicer than the McLaren was. Daniel Ricciardo is 0.8 of a second in front. If we stay here, we'll see DRS down the start-finish straight. Will we see a change of position into turn 1? We shall find out. Gasly getting good traction out of the final corner as well. We do have DRS, but Gasly not really wanting to use a slipstream. He's not quite close enough to get a very strong slipstream, but still he's not even trying to stay directly behind the car in front. Interesting to see that. I don't know if he's getting too much turbulence and it's just bothering him in terms of buffeting his head around, but you'd expect to see a driver try and match the trajectory of the car in front almost exactly to maximize any slipstream effect. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has just reset fastest lap of the race. We're in the 1:08 range. Max Verstappen, 1:08.317, fastest lap. McLaren radio to Lando Norris. They're cheering him on, telling him that he's doing an absolutely fantastic job. They're also going on to tell him, if possible, hold Ricciardo in your rearview mirror. So in other words, hold him up a little bit. Meanwhile, TV cameras rejoin Charles Leclerc. We're on board with him right now, just having a very quiet day in the office thus far. That Ferrari looking and sounding fantastic. Watching his steering, everything is very smooth and supple. No violent reactions, no oversteer, no appreciable understeer either. Just ticking the laps by for the young Monegasque. He resets. He does not reset fastest lap. That goes to Carlos Sainz all the way down in P14, a 1:08.241. And immediately that's been retaken by Max Verstappen. 1:08.165 now for Max Verstappen. You notice that the lap times are getting progressively faster as the fuel loads burn down. No refueling, of course. Riding on board with Charles Leclerc, though, this is the view that you want. Clear track out in front. Your nearest rival is 4.2 seconds back. We're just coming up to lap of Williams. Pierre Gasly now overtaking Daniel Ricciardo. In replay, that was. We didn't see it on track there live. And Sebastian Vettel running in P3. He's 3 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen is on a charge. He's consistently about 3.5, 4 tenths faster per lap than the German. Verstappen may well have DRS in a moment. He does not, but perhaps down the infield straight. Not entirely sure what the gap actually is at this point. It's 1.3, so he's not quite close enough. Meanwhile, it is a very hot day in Austria, 35 degrees ambient, 50 degrees track temperature at only 16% humidity. So it's a dry heat in Austria today. Obviously, the Ferrari's enjoying these conditions. The Mercedes, not so much. Red Bull on the radio to Max, telling him that they do have a pace advantage over Vettel, specifically into turn 1, so use that. Verstappen's still just outside the 1 second margin relative to Sebastian Vettel. That'll be changing momentarily, though, despite the Ferrari being very fast down the straights. Vettel is able to pull away slightly just on horsepower. Gap between Vettel and Verstappen, now just half a second. Verstappen has DRS down start finish. Will he try a move into turn 1? It's risky. He decides better of it. However, he will stick with the Ferrari down the straight toward turn 3. He will have DRS once again through this section of the circuit. On board with Sebastian Vettel looking behind at the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. No, he is not quite close enough into turn 3. Turn 4, though, slight lockup for the Dutchman there. More DRS for Max Verstappen, though. He has the slipstream, he has the DRS. Undoubtedly, he'll have turned the engine up. Vettel defends to the inside into 4. We do not have a change in position yet. Sebastian Vettel retains P3. Verstappen holding his position relative to Vettel, though, through the infield section. This is where the high-speed arrow starts to come in a little bit. Basically the only properly high-speed corners on this circuit in the infield. Verstappen drops back a little bit there, dealing with a little bit of dirty air, I am sure. However, he's still close enough for DRS down start-finish. Verstappen again, he's able to close that gap into turn 1, but he's unable to effect an overtake. More DRS down the infield straight into turn 3. Slightly closer than we were on the previous lap, but still unable to get into position for an overtake into 3. Verstappen taking a very tight line through turn 3 to get closer down the straight once again in the run to 4. Vettel will defend to the inside again, I would presume. Nope. Vettel parking the car right in the middle of the circuit, and that is enough. It worked last time, and it will work this time as well. No change of position there. Vettel still in P3, Verstappen still in P4. Let's not lose sight of the front end of the field, though. Charles Leclerc continuing to lead this race by 4.1 seconds. Valtteri Bottas unable to make any inroads. Vettel slightly wide out of the long right-hander there. No problems. Verstappen once again down start finish with DRS. He had a look up the inside, thought better of it. He is closer than he was on the previous lap, so lap by lap, Verstappen just progressively reeling in the Ferrari. The Ferrari, I think, is able to resist because of superior horsepower. Vettel going defensive, though, into 3. Again, parking the car right in the middle. Verstappen got much better drive out of turn 3, though. He's very close now to Sebastian Vettel, halfway down the infield straight into turn 4. Verstappen gets the move done before the braking zone for turn 4. That's a change of position. Max Verstappen into 3rd. Sebastian Vettel falling down into 4th. Max Verstappen is on a charge. We have 21 laps to go in this race. Can Max catch Valtteri Bottas? Well, yes, I would say that's possible. They're in the same camera shot right now. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, he sets fastest lap while he's at it. 107.844. Ferrari in the pit lane for Sebastian Vettel. We make that stop. This is Vettel's second stop of the day onto the soft tires. This appears to be an effort to go for fastest lap. So there goes any conspiracy theories of Vettel and Leclerc being asked to swap positions there. Vettel now well and truly out of contention by any stretch of the imagination. He's simply going to try and score one extra point for fastest lap. 20 laps to do it, and he's got a fresh set of soft tires. What's interesting here, though, is in order to make that pit stop, Sebastian Vettel had to give up track position to Lewis Hamilton. Are Ferrari anticipating Seb to be so much faster than Hamilton that he'll be able to overtake him in his quest for fastest lap? It's possible. However, we do know that Mercedes has quite the spectacular party mode on that engine if they need it. In replay, here's that overtake by Verstappen on Vettel. Verstappen will now be quite annoyed that Ferrari decided to pit. Again, the situation we have brewing here, we have 19 laps to go this time by. Max Verstappen is only 1.2 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas, who is 4.5 seconds down the road from Charles Leclerc. In 19 laps, with the pace that the Red Bull has shown right now, providing that Verstappen can get past Bottas without incident, he will be in contention for the race win by the end of affairs today. Max Verstappen lapping a racing point. Now has clear road once again to Valtteri Bottas. Verstappen takes some DRS from that racing point, though. He'll use that to reel Bottas back in. Leclerc last time by 1 minute 8 seconds, .513. Max was a tenth faster on the previous lap. Nothing really to write home about, but still, the Red Bull is faster than the Ferrari at this stage. Of course, we are not assuming that Ferrari have turned the engine all the way up for Charles Leclerc. They have no need to do that at this point, so we would assume that they have some pace in the bank if they needed. Max Verstappen once again resets fastest lap on lap 53. Sebastian Vettel now resetting fastest lap. We're in the 107s. One minute 7.787, fastest lap for Sebastian Vettel. The pace is continuing to speed up. Verstappen in DRS range now relative to Valtteri Bottas. Is he going to try the same move that he did on Sebastian Vettel? Undoubtedly, Mercedes will have told Bottas about what happened previously. But Max is visually faster than the Mercedes at this point. Max on the radio to Red Bull, I believe he said, "I'm losing power twice." Is he simply running out of ERS energy, or is there an issue brewing on that Red Bull? The Red Bull mechanics now looking somewhat tense. We don't need this to happen again. Remember, in 2018, Daniel Ricciardo put on such a dominant drive here only to lose the engine. There is a problem on that Red Bull. Red Bull on the radio to Max telling him fail 3. That's a message telling the driver to cycle through his displays there and deactivate sensors. Perhaps they're just getting spurious data from one of the sensors and they want to take it offline. The Red Bull still appears to be plenty fast as Max goes up the inside of Valtteri Bottas into turn 3, and he makes the move stick. Max Verstappen now in second position. 15 laps to go. Providing that the Red Bull remains healthy, we have a fight for the win on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. Message from Red Bull to Verstappen, game on. So it would appear that the car is healthy. They just had a sensor drop out, it would appear. The gap between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen is now just over 5 seconds. That move from Verstappen on Bottas, no contest at all. Bottas didn't even attempt to fight. Toto Wolff not looking content at all in replay. I have to wonder who's going to be sitting in that Mercedes come 2020. Could it be somebody like Max Verstappen? I wonder. Now, the statisticians among you may be interested in the relative tire life between Leclerc and Verstappen. Leclerc's tires are 35 laps old. Verstappen's are 26 laps old. They are both the hard compound, the silver sidewall. However, Max's tires are a good 10 laps newer than those of Charles Leclerc. Now, we know that Leclerc has not really been pushing the tires too hard, and he is generally very gentle on the tires in general. But with 12 laps to go, with a fight for the win on his hands, Leclerc undoubtedly will be turning up the engine if necessary. Does he have enough pace left in those tires if he has to push them a little harder? The gap is still relatively stable, 4.8 seconds, so down 0.2. It's fluctuating, though, back between 4.8 and 5 seconds exactly. Just taking a look at the tires of Charles Leclerc, they look okay. Little bit of inside shoulder wear on the rears, as you would expect at this point. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, sets fastest lap, 1 minute 7.766. Red Bull just going through some switch settings with Max Verstappen. I believe that would have to do with engine modes. Again, we haven't heard any more chatter regarding the sensor failures that we've had on that Red Bull. And again, relative to the pace, it would appear that the Red Bull is healthy. Verstappen is consistently faster over the course of a single lap than Charles Leclerc, but the differences are not that huge. A tenth here, a tenth there. About 0.2 a lap faster on the previous lap. We'll see if Leclerc can respond. The gap now 4.6 seconds. Both Leclerc and Verstappen have some lap traffic to contend with. Verstappen just lapping Kimi Räikkönen there, who gets out of the way without any fuss. The gap now 4.4 seconds. Haven't seen if Leclerc managed to get around the lap traffic. I would assume that he has. I haven't seen him on television again. And the relative pace on the previous lap, lap 59, Verstappen still faster than Leclerc, but by 43 thousandths of a second. Leclerc faster in sectors 2 and 3. Verstappen's making all of his time in sector 1. Another fastest lap from Max, 1 minute 7.475. Ten laps to go. Starting to get tense at this point. Charles Leclerc continues to lead the race by just about 4 seconds exactly over Max Verstappen. Verstappen is marginally quicker lap over lap, but it's not huge. It's not enough at this relative pace to catch Leclerc by the end. Again, the Red Bull appears to be stronger in Sector 1. The Ferrari appears to be stronger everywhere else. There's more lap traffic ahead of the race leader. Lap traffic costs Leclerc about 0.3 there. And there is still a McLaren, I believe that is Carlos Sainz, ahead of the race leader at this point. Again, Verstappen will also have to contend with this lap traffic. Carlos Sainz needs to get on with the program here and let the race leader by, though. And he does. Charles Leclerc lost an entire second behind the McLaren of Carlos Sainz. This is simply a question of track position relative to the back markers. Leclerc caught Carlos Sainz through sectors 2 and 3, and that cost him a lot of time. Verstappen able to dispatch with the McLaren in sector 1. It's just a question of where the drivers encounter the traffic. Kevin Magnussen letting Leclerc by with no drama at all. Lockup for Kevin Magnussen. That shouldn't unsettle Max Verstappen. He was a long way back from that. The gap 2.8 seconds on lap 63. Bottas has already dropped back enormously. 9.8 seconds is the gap between Bottas and Leclerc, P1 to P3. Gap has grown again slightly to 2.5 seconds. Charles Leclerc to Max Verstappen. Verstappen having to contend with the same lap traffic that Charles Leclerc had to contend with. Again, it's not an ideal situation for either driver, but it is at least relatively equal for the both of them. Valtteri Bottas, though, 10 seconds back, almost 11 seconds back. Verstappen on the last lap, just under 0.2 faster than Charles Leclerc. They are dead even in Sector 3. Charles Leclerc getting very out of shape there in turn 1. Caught a big snap of oversteer. That's not exactly what you want to be seeing if you're leading a Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is getting quite close to Charles Leclerc now. It is 1.4 seconds the gap. We're on lap 65 of 71. There is still sufficient time for us to be seeing quite a scrap for the race win, and Verstappen doesn't need to be told twice that that's an opportunity available to him. Pierre Gasly will be the next car that Charles Leclerc has to encounter to lap. .2 seconds the gap coming down start-finish between Leclerc and Verstappen. Verstappen, we're on board with him now. That is the Ferrari immediately in front of us. Will we be within 1 second for the DRS zone? It does not appear so, and indeed we are not. No DRS yet for Max Verstappen. He will be getting it, though, if this pace continues. Just looking at the difference of lines through turn 3, Charles Leclerc to Max Verstappen. Verstappen prefers to keep the car tight into the apex, whereas Leclerc has been taking a wider line through there all day long. He did so in qualifying as well. The leader's now coming up to lap Pierre Gasly. Remember, Pierre Gasly is a Red Bull driver. Max Verstappen is also a Red Bull driver. Will we be seeing some interesting tactics here to the benefit of Max Verstappen? We will see. Charles Leclerc on the radio to Ferrari. He does not want to know the relative time between he and Verstappen at this point. He can see him in the mirrors. Max Verstappen with DRS down start finish. Charles Leclerc, of course, does not have the luxury of that. 5 laps to go. Max Verstappen will have DRS down this second straight as well between turns 2 and 3. Big difference in straight line speed now between the Ferrari and the Red Bull. Charles Leclerc needs to go defensive into turn 3. He goes defensive. He parks the car in the middle. Max Verstappen unable to effect a move here. Charles Leclerc altering his line defensively, tight to the apex in turn 3, as we would expect. Max Verstappen with DRS. Leclerc keeping the car in the middle of the road. On the brakes, Charles Leclerc is able to brake slightly later than Max Verstappen. They both go slightly wide. This is a fight now through the infield. No DRS assist available to either car. This is pure aerodynamics. Charles Leclerc, how does he look? The car is stable and rock steady, as does the car of Max Verstappen look equally stable. Leclerc able to pull away a bit in Sector 2. This is what we have been seeing so far relative to the timing and scoring screens. Now we're seeing it with our eyes. Lap 67 is about to close. Lap 68 is about to begin. The gap is .616 between Verstappen and Leclerc for positions 2 and 1. Flip those around there. Verstappen taking a look up the inside, decides to back out of that. That was never going to work. Leclerc and Verstappen both bobbling out of turn 1, just going hard over the curbs there, no problem. Max Verstappen using DRS once again into turn 3. Leclerc parks it in the middle. Verstappen going up the inside of Charles Leclerc into turn 3. They are side by side out of turn 3. Verstappen with DRS. Leclerc using the superior horsepower of the Ferrari to gain the position back. Verstappen going up the outside. Leclerc outbraking Verstappen into turn 4. The Ferrari does appear to be the faster car. However, who has the harder nerve at this point? It is absolutely neck and neck between these two drivers. The Ferrari is faster in sectors 2 and 3. The Red Bull is faster in sector 1. And of course, Verstappen has DRS to help him in his quest for victory as well. Charles Leclerc coming up to lap a Williams. Max Verstappen also gets by the Williams. Once again, a clear track ahead of these two drivers. The gap is 0.6, down start finish as it was on the previous lap. 3 laps to go. Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen, who will win the Austrian Grand Prix? At this point, it is a coin toss. Coming down the straight toward turn 3, once again, Verstappen with DRS. Leclerc unable to defend with DRS. Verstappen up the inside into turn 3. Leclerc turning in. Max Verstappen forces Leclerc off the track. Max Verstappen takes the lead of the Grand Prix. Leclerc had to go evasive and jump off the road. Charles Leclerc coming back at him, though, into turn 4. This is not over, folks. Charles Leclerc catching a bit of oversteer out of turn 4. Max Verstappen pulling away now from Charles Leclerc. The gap is already 1 second. Let's see on board with Max Verstappen in replay. Turning in. There was contact between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Verstappen's left front to Leclerc's right front. No damage on either car. There was contact between Verstappen and Leclerc. Leclerc was punted off the circuit. Due to that contact, Verstappen does have the lead of the Grand Prix. Given what we've been seeing as of late, we are going to be expecting a protest. Meanwhile, on board with Sebastian Vettel in pursuit of Lewis Hamilton, they are just 0.2 of a second between each other. Vettel with DRS. Hamilton unable to use DRS in defense. Vettel up the outside into turn 4. Easy move. Lewis Hamilton locking up, unable to respond to the Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel up into P4. The final lap has begun. Max Verstappen leads Charles Leclerc by 1.5 seconds. Sebastian Vettel has overtaken Lewis Hamilton for P4. Ferrari's running 2nd and 4th. Red Bull's running 1st and 7th. Mercedes running 3rd and 5th. The cameras pick up Max Verstappen as he comes out of turn 3 for the final time. He has some lapped cars ahead of him. That's a McLaren. I believe that is Lando Norris. Verstappen is lapped up to P6. Through Sector 2 for the final time, and the sea of orange-clad Dutch fans are absolutely elated to see this. Up the hill for the final time in Sector 3, Max Verstappen through the penultimate corner, just 1 corner to go between Max Verstappen and the checkered flag. Victory to Max Verstappen in the Austrian Grand Prix. For the first time in 2019, a Mercedes has not won a Grand Prix. The perfect season is no more for Mercedes. Red Bull, the first team in 2019 to challenge the Silver Arrows and to come out on top. Victory to Max Verstappen in Austria. And we have gotten official word that the stewards are now reviewing the overtake that Max Verstappen effected on Charles Leclerc in turn 3. I will take this opportunity to go on record and saying that neither driver deserves a penalty for that incident. That's a pass for the race victory. Yes, there was contact. Yes, Charles Leclerc was forced off the circuit. However, this is racing. Max Verstappen had the faster car. He was consistently faster than Charles Leclerc in the closing stages of that race. Max Verstappen won that Grand Prix. Also, this is the first victory for Honda in Formula One since the 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix. Welcome back to the top step of the podium, Honda. Max Verstappen in Parc Fermé, greeting the Red Bull mechanics who are absolutely elated. That was a masterclass, and I dare say the drive of the season. Interesting to see that we have two historic Grand Prix cars parked at the head of Parc Fermé. Looks like a McLaren MP42B and a Ferrari 312T. Of course, both former Niki Lauda cars. Max Verstappen espousing my viewpoint, it's racing. If we're not going to do that, we might as well stay home, he says. Martin Brundle now talking to Charles Leclerc. And as we might expect, Charles Leclerc taking the converse view of that incident. He's saying it was really clear in the car. I don't know what it looked like from outside, but I'll let the stewards make the decision on that. And P3, Valtteri Bottas, the only Mercedes representative on the podium today. He had absolutely no response for Max Verstappen. Bottas saying that he was struggling with overheating. And just a clarification, the aberrations that you're seeing on the surfaces of the tires in Parc Fermé, that's not tire wear necessarily. What you're seeing is marbles and other debris that the drivers intentionally pick up on the cool-down lap just to make sure that the cars make the minimum weight. And, of course, the Dutch fans now beginning to invade the circuit from all sides. They want to see this podium. Looking at Bottas and Verstappen in the prep room there. Charles Leclerc, not quite sure where he's gone. And now the FOM cameras pick up those two historic Grand Prix cars, both driven by Niki Lauda to world championships, the McLaren MP42 and the Ferrari 312T. Everybody in Parc Fermé just awaiting the start of the podium festivities. On to the podium now come our top three finishers, Valtteri Bottas, Charles Leclerc, and Max Verstappen. And to rapturous applause of all the Dutch fans on the scene, Max Verstappen mounts the podium in P1, his first victory of the season, Red Bull's first victory of the season, and the first non-Mercedes victory of the season, now the Dutch and Austrian national anthems. Well, regardless of what ultimately happens from the stewards' room, it's undoubtedly a very popular victory here in Austria for Max Verstappen. There's a Honda representative up there on the podium on behalf of Red Bull. Honda's first victory since 2006, remember. The orange smoke has been released from all corners of the circuit. Fans are definitely very happy with what they have seen on track today. Let's hope it remains so. Again, Formula One is in a really tight position here with these stewards' inquiries. We've had 3 races now in succession where we have had investigations into the top 10 finishers. Of course, we had Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel under investigation in Canada. That cost Sebastian Vettel the victory in the Canadian Grand Prix. We had penalties doled out, namely for Daniel Ricciardo in France last week, which altered finishing positions in the top 10. And now we've got an investigation once again into the race winner. Formula One cannot afford to have races decided by bureaucrats. If you're going to be putting on a show involving racing drivers and race cars, you need to let the racing drivers and race cars determine the final finishing order. If you're going to have stewards' inquiries determine the final results, you may as well not have the race, in my view. At this point, not all that much else to say, though. We saw the show on track, and I thought it was an absolutely scintillating Grand Prix. Finally, we have had a car other than a Mercedes stand on the top step of the podium at the end of a Formula One race in 2019. We now will sit tight and wait for stewards' inquiries to decide anything, if they are going to decide anything. And again, you know my views on that. The result on track has to take precedent over anything else. If you're not going to allow results on track to stand when the checkered flag flies, then you may as well not go racing. We'll have to wait. I'm in the dark, just as all of you remain in the dark regarding the results of the stewards' inquiry. Of course, both drivers are probably going to have to speak to the stewards before we hear any sort of information, so I would assume we're going to be waiting for a number of hours yet before we do hear a final verdict from the stewards. But on track, Max Verstappen beats Charles Leclerc today. The first victory for Verstappen this year, the first non-Mercedes victory of 2019. Regardless of what happens today from the stewards' room, Mercedes is not going to have a perfect season in 2019. For the moment, though, as I have nothing more interesting to give you from the Austrian Grand Prix, I am going to be signing off. I do thank you all very much for joining me this morning, on the East Coast anyway. Thank you very much for your continued support of the channel, and of course, I'm sure that we're going to be getting a verdict from the stewards at some point later today, and if it goes one way, undoubtedly I'm going to have something to say about it, so stay tuned for that, and of course, watch the news feeds depending on what happens from the results of that steward's decision. Until next time, though, thank you all for joining me. Ferrariman601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.